What's going on, YouTube? So I'm currently live on Twitch, and something really big has just happened, and I genuinely feel the need to address it. So quick disclaimer before we get started on this. Since the announcement that I'm going to be talking about in the video you are about to watch, there's another announcement that has been posted that said that they are potentially taking back what they previously said. So do take what I say in this video with a grain of salt. I recorded the video before this new announcement was made, but as it currently stands, they said they're going to be deliberating tonight and they'll be coming back with more information about it tomorrow. So tomorrow, expect another video from me with an update as to what's happening, but I still wanted to post this video to give you guys the information should they decide to stick with the initial call that they made, so you guys will have the information should you need it. So enjoy the video, guys. Have a good one. For all those of you that aren't aware, there is a YCS remote duel tournament happening in both NA, EU, and South America this coming weekend. Now, in the European Discord server where they are holding that event, they have decided that they want to basically not use the April 1st rules revision that was implemented in 2020 in the OCG, and every single TCG territory ever since has basically been using them for almost all the official tournaments. So for the post itself, it was posted by one of the judges, and they said they've decided to go with the old rules. So they said, we tried our best, but unfortunately we cannot wait for confirmation any longer. The remote duel YCS Europe will be held using standard TCG rules, and we will not be using the rules revision you may be familiar with from previous extravaganzas. If player A activates Drytron Alpha Thuban, tributing Cyber Angel Benten for cost, and player B chains to the alpha with DD Crow banishing the Benten, once the chain resolves, will player A be able to activate the Cyber Angel Benten in the new chain. And in Europe, prior to these rules, the Benten was able to activate. So for this event, yes, in KDE territories, as long as it has successfully met its trigger, it may activate even if it has moved location. I'm gonna go over the rules that basically are going to be applied very differently in this YCS than what you are normally used to, just so that you guys have a proper understanding as to what is happening. So there's this article on YG.org that basically outlines what the 5 different changes are, and I'll go over them with you guys real quick. So the first change that you have is the activation of monster effects for monsters returned to the deck or extra deck face down. So previously, before the rules revision, if a monster was shuffled back into the extra deck, so monsters such as Curious or Avramax, they would still be able to activate their effects. After this rules revision, they were no longer able to do so. So for the European remote duel YCS, if you say shuffle back one of your opponent's Mech Knight Crusadia Avramaxes back into their extra deck, that Avramax will still be able to activate in order to shuffle away one of your cards, even though it was returned to the extra deck. So a lot of people are not used to this rule, but it is something that you're going to need to consider, because you can still trigger like your opponent's Curious or your opponent's Absolute Zero by shuffling them back into the extra deck. Now for the big one, this is basically the DD Crow Benten ruling, but I'll explain it as a whole so that you don't just focus on that one instance and understand the ruling completely. Regarding the activation of cards and effects that move away from their activation location before their effects have activated. So in any instance where you have, for example, a monster that triggers if it's sent to the graveyard. In this example, I'll use Cherubini and Graph. Say you use the effect of Cherubini, sending the Graph Male Branch of the Burning Abyss from the deck to the graveyard as cost, and your opponent chains DD Crow targeting your Graph and banishes it. With the new rules revision, your Graph should not be able to activate, but because Europe is using, for this specific event, they are using the old rules revision, your Graph will be able to activate regardless. So if you're playing against like a Phantom Knights or Burning Abyss player, make sure that you don't make that mistake. You don't DD Crow the Graph that they're sending off of the Cherubini, because it will still be able to activate. So this is the same situation that happens with the Cyber Angel Benten with the DD Crow. Basically, if a monster meets its trigger in a specific location, so a monster that meets its trigger, if this card is summoned or something like that, it can be away from that location in order to activate. One good example that I would like to outline, because I think this is one that will come up a lot for Sky Striker players and Salamangreat players. Say you have a Ray on your field, and you use the effect of Ray as Chainlink 2 when your opponent uses a Salamangreat Rage as Chainlink 1. So you use the effect of Salamangreat Rage as Chain Link 1, the effect that targets one of your Link monsters to destroy cards on your opponent's field up to the number of that monster's Link rating. This effect doesn't target. So say you have the Salamangreat Rage and you activate that effect as Chain Link 1, and your opponent chains Ray as Chain Link 2 and summons a Kagari. Now, the way this would resolve is the Rage will destroy the Kagari, and under the new rules revision, the Kagari should not be able to activate because it's no longer in its trigger location, that being the field. But under these new rules, these old rules, I should say, for the EU Remote Duel YCS, if you do this exact interaction in a new chain, what's going to happen is the Ray will be able to activate as Chain Link 1 or 2, and the Kagari will be able to activate as Chain Link 1 or 2. So if you Rage to use the non-targeting destruction effect when your opponent has Ray, and they chain Ray summon Kagari, even if you pop that Kagari, the Kagari will still be able to trigger, and the Ray will also be able to trigger because it will be able to come back because the Kagari was cleared from the field. So this is really the big one. This is the one that people really, really need to be aware of, and make sure that you play around this, because we've been playing with these new rules for almost a year and a half now, and a lot of people have gotten really used to this, and you're actually going to have to like focus on making sure that you use these new rules, well, these old rules, I should say, once again, in the correct way so you don't get screwed over. The other two, these two are basically essentially the same kind of thing. It's that attempted summons are now still a thing. So essentially, this rule that says regarding the normal or special summon of a monster in relation to cards and effects that mention during the turn you activate this card / effect. So one of the ones that you'll probably be seeing a lot of the time is something like Transcode Talker. So Transcode Talker has the effect that reads that if you summon a non-Cyberse monster during the turn that you use its effect, you basically can't activate the Transcode Talker. Yeah, it says you cannot special summon monsters the turn you activate this effect except Cyberse monsters. Before you use the effect of Transcode Talker, if you attempted to summon a non-Cyberse and that non-Cyberse monster has its summon negated by something like Solemn Strike, the Transcode Talker still will not be able to activate its effect. Under that same line of thinking, if your opponent controls an El Shaddai Winda, basically what's going to happen is if you attempt to special summon a monster and they negate the summon of that monster while they control the Winda still has seen one special summon that was attempted, so you cannot attempt to special summon another monster that turn under the Winda, even if the summon gets negated by Solemn Strike of the monster that you were attempting to special summon, which is different to what we've known from these new rules for the past year and a half. The other one that is quite similar is regarding the special summon of monsters that mention they can only be special summoned once per turn. One archetype of monsters, once again, is Sky Striker that utilize this quite a lot. So all the Sky Striker links literally say you can only special summon Sky Striker Ace Kagari once per turn. If you attempt to link summon a Sky Striker Ace Kagari and it gets its summon negated by Solemn Strike, under the new Master Rule revision, under the April 1st revision, I should say, you were still allowed to attempt to summon a second Kagari. Now, with these rules that the EU YCS is going to be implementing, you won't be able to attempt to summon the Kagari again. Basically, you're going to be kind of shit out of luck because your Ray won't be able to come back because the Kagari has its summon negated. And even if you have a means of putting like a Rose or a token, a Sky Striker token on the board, you won't be able to attempt to link summon the Kagari again for the European Remote Duel YCS. So this is a very good thing to know. Solemn Strike just got quite a bit more powerful against decks like these, and if you're playing Sky Striker, you're gonna want to know these rulings just so that you don't make the mistake and you don't kind of get shit out of luck because you won't be able to summon the Kagari once again afterwards. The last rule change applies quite a lot to Eldritch players, so it's a very important one to go over. In terms of continuous traps that special summon themselves as monsters by their own effects and are still treated as trap cards. So one of the best ones for this example is the Conquistador. The Conquistador summons itself and is still treated as a trap card. So before the April 1st revision, these cards were still considered to take up a spot in your spell and trap card zone. So this is how it's going to be ruled for the European Remote Duel YCS. If you have a Conquistador in your monster zone that was summoned by its own effect and 4 set spells or traps, you basically cannot set a 5th spell or trap card because that Conquistador still is considered to occupy one of those spell and trap zones. So this is something that if you're playing Eldritch, you're gonna have to keep in mind, or if you're playing against Eldritch, because your spells and trap zones are gonna be quite limited and they won't be as substantial as you would normally have. have. You're going to have quite a few less because these cards are still going to be occupying the zones. So you're going to have to be careful and make sure that you manage your zones for your spells and traps correctly if you're playing in this YCS, because otherwise you might get caught out and be like, you want to activate your Sanguine to get a disruption and you don't have a spot for it, even though you, for the past year and a half, you would have been able to. Under these rules, these old rules that EU is applying, you will not be able to use the effect of the Sanguine to set like a Conquistador or vice versa if you do not have a free open zone, if you have one of these trap monsters summoned to your field. So let me know in the comment section of this video what you guys think about these new rules revisions. If you guys have any questions, join my Discord. I'll leave a link in the description of this video for you guys to join my Discord. You guys can ask your ruling questions there. If you have any sort of doubts about whether or not something works or doesn't work for this specific event. But anyways, guys, I hope you guys learned something new, and I'm really happy that I can bring this to you guys so that you guys are at least in the know of what's happening for this YCS before you actually get into it and might get, you know, kind of caught out not really knowing what's going on. So hopefully this keeps you up to date and you guys are now, you know, fully aware of what's happening and that you guys are going to be, you know, ready to play for that YCS. So thank you guys. I'll see you guys in the next video.